Prabhupada ki. Srimad Bhagavatam ki. Reading from Sri Prabhupada Leela Chapter 8 of Let There Be a Temple. Another major objection from the city had been that the temple's bhajan would create a nuisance, and that point had to be satisfied first and foremost. When the police saw Prabhupada's drawing of the projected temple and hotel, they admitted that within such a big temple, the kirtan would not create as much noise as it did at present. So they agreed to that and removed their objections based on nuisance, in inverted commas, provided ISKCON tear down the straw huts and widen the access roads so the tenants could approach the back portion of the land. Each of these legal demands involved many detailed points of contention. It was like a long, drawn-out chess game. But Prabhupada was experienced, cautious, and determined. He proposed to stay at Hare Krishna land for several months to help Giriraj, Mr. Teti, and the others. Meanwhile, Prabhupada insisted that the spiritual program at Hare Krishna land go forward unabated. Even without a permanent temple, 500 to 700 guests were coming for the Sunday feasts. Giriraj had reported to Prabhupada that Janmashtami in Bombay had been a great success, with several thousand people coming to see the deities and take prasadam. For Srila Prabhupada, who is now accustomed to staying in places like New York or Los Angeles for a week or less, to stay in Bombay for a 3-month period confirmed again that Hare Krishna land was very dear to him. It was his special child. When danger threatened, he became alarmed and protected. And when success came, he was very proud and wanted to tell the world. Srila Prabhupada ki. So reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 2, entitled The Activities of Maharaj Agnitra. Text 4 and 5. Is it?
Yeah, you can recite together number 5.
Jutakala is saying, because this is prose, then he said that we just chant it ourselves and continue.
Okay.
Sacha tat ashramo pavanam atiramaniyam vivida vitapi vitapa mekara samshlista purata lataruta stava vihangama mitunai Prajamana Shrutivi Pratibodhyamana Salina Kukutta Kalandava Kalahamsadavi Vichitram Upakuchitamala Jalam Shaya Kamala Kadam Upabrahma. Onto the translations. The Apsara sent by Lord Brahma began strolling in a beautiful park near the place where the king was meditating and worshipping. The park was beautiful because of its dense green foliage and green golden creepers. There were pairs of varied birds such as peacocks, and in the lake there were ducks and swans, all vibrating very sweet sounds. Thus the park was magnificently beautiful because of the foliage, the clear water, the lotus flowers, and the sweet singing of various kinds of birds. Text 5. Tasya sulalita gamana pada vinyasa gati Vilasa Yaschanupadam Kana Yamana Ruchira Charana Bharana Swanam Upakanya Naradeva Kumara Samadhi Yoginam Milita Nayana Nalina Mukula Yugalam Ishad Vikachaya Vyachashta. Go through word for word. Tasya of her Purvachiti. Sulalita in a very beautiful Kamana movements. Pada Vinyasa with styles of walking. Gati in the progression. Vilasaya whose pastime. Cha also. Anupadam with every step. Kana Yamana making a tinkling sound. Ruchira very pleasing. Charana Abharana of the ornaments on the feet. Swanam the sound. Upakanya hearing. Naradeva Kumara the prince. Samadhi in ecstasy. Yogena by controlling the senses. Amilita half open. Naina eyes. Nalina of lotus. Mukula buds. Yugalam like a pear. Ishat slightly. Vikachaya opening. Vyachashta sword. Translation. As Purvachiti passed by on the road in a very beautiful style and mood of her own, the pleasing ornaments on her ankles tinkled with her every step. Although Prince Admitra was controlling his senses, practicing yoga with half-open eyes, he could see her with his lotus-like eyes, and when he heard the sweet twinkling of her bangles, he opened his eyes slightly more and could see that she was just nearby. Please repeat. As Purvachiti passed by on the road in a very beautiful style, and mood of her own, the pleasing ornaments on her ankles tinkled with her every step. Although Prince Admitra was controlling his senses, practicing yoga with half-open eyes, he could see her with his lotus-like eyes. And when he heard the sweet tinkling of her bangles, he opened his eyes slightly more and could see that she was just nearby. Purport. It is said that yogis always think of the Supreme Personality of Godhead within their hearts. Dhyana prastita tadgatina manasa pashyanti yam yogina. Bhagavatam 12:13-1. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is always observed by yogis who practice controlling the venomous senses. As recommended in Bhagavad Gita, yogis should practice Samprekshya Nasikagrum, keeping their eyes half open. If the eyes are closed completely, there will be a tendency to sleep. So-called yogis sometimes practice a fashionable form of yoga by closing their eyes and meditating. But we have actually seen such so-called yogis sleeping and snoring while meditating. This is not the practice of yoga. To actually practice yoga, one should keep his eyes half open and gaze at the tip of his nose. Although Agnitra, the son of Priyabrata, was practicing mystic yoga and trying to control his senses, the tinkling sound of Purvachiti's ankle bells disturbed his practice. Yoga Indriya Samyama. Actually, yoga practice means controlling the senses. One must practice mystic yoga to control the senses, but the sense control of a devotee who fully engages in the devotional service with his purified senses, Rishikesha Sevanam, can never be disturbed. Srila Prabodhananda Saraswati therefore stated, Duradantendriya Kala Sarpatili Protkata Sabdamstra Yate. Chaitanya Chandramrita 5. The practice of yoga is undoubtedly good because it controls the senses, which are like venomous serpents. When one engages in devotional service, however, completely employing all the activities of the senses in the service of the Lord, the venomous quality of the senses is completely nullified. It is explained that a serpent is to be feared because of its poisoned fangs. But if those fangs are broken, the serpent, although it seems fearsome, is not at all dangerous. Devotees, therefore, may see hundreds and thousands of beautiful women with fascinating bodily movements and gestures, but not be allured, whereas such women would make ordinary yogis fall. Even the advanced yogi, Vishwamitra, broke his mystic practice to unite with Menaka and beget a child known as Shakuntala. The practice of mystic yoga, therefore, is not sufficiently strong to control the senses. Another example is Prince Agnitra, whose attention was drawn to the movements of Purvachiti, the Apsara, simply because he heard the tinkling of their ankle bells. In the same way that Vishwamrita Muni was attracted by the tinkling bangles of Menaka, Prince Agnitra, upon hearing the tinkling bangles of Purvachiti, immediately opened his eyes to see her beautiful movements as she walked. The prince was also very handsome, as described herein. His eyes were just like the buds of lotus flowers. As he opened his lotus-like eyes, he could immediately see that the Apsara was present by his side. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Dvaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So, by mercy of the devotees, I've been given an opportunity to speak. So, by mercy, I'll be able to share something of some inspiration. So, I request your blessings for that. So Prabhupada here is describing how alluring the movements of women are in the female form, and how they can distract the minds of men. And materialists are very aware of this, and how when to use this to their advantage for material gain, with advertising and so on. but this is just taken advantage of the spirit soul's need for higher purpose in life, higher, more elevated ways of satisfaction, for the need for deep spiritual satisfaction, and bliss and knowledge in one's relationship with Krishna, the source of their existence. And being disconnected by that source, then the soul seeks so many other, tries to seek that same satisfaction, but in sources that determine that satisfaction won't be provided. One can't be satisfied with something that's temporary, full of ignorance and misery, and take to that in the hope of getting something that's eternal, completely blissful and full of knowledge. It's just a foregone conclusion. But still, due to lack of knowledge, a very poor fund of knowledge, the soul wanders in this world, and in hope of getting such satisfaction, but completely ignorant of his own history, his own source and nature in the spiritual realm. So in this way, one can travels on the frail wheel of samsara with repeated birth and death, and the material energy is expert at enticing and alluring the conditioned soul in so many ways, in unlimited ways, to keep it bound in this cycle of birth and death. So one of her ways of allurement is the opposite sex, and so that's there whether one's even in the most pious persons in the mode of goodness, or one speak of in the mode of ignorance, all can be bewildered by the nature of the opposite sex, and whether one's in the lower species, they also have their like ant wife or hog wife that they're very attracted by, or to speak of the descriptions we find here of perversity. So Prince Agnitra, he's in the higher castes, and he's performing austerities, but it's for the same purpose. But by following regulative ways of life, then one can live in this world in a way that promotes peace and prosperity, rather than illicit connections with the opposite sex, which just bring quarrel, war, and scarcity, and just a continued struggle for existence. So it said previously how Agnitra was was overcome by lusty desires due to while being conceived, the mind of Priyavata was bewildered in this way. So this was carried through to the consciousness of the child, and so Admitra is in this situation. So he's the object of his desires, because Maya has presented the object of his, Lord Brahma, the object of his desires has come before him, and he surrenders to that. Whereas we have an example of how the devotee, whatever position he's in, by being fully engaged in the Lord's service, taking up the process of devotional service to Lord Krishna, then he has the power to be able to resist such desires. So we have to be convinced of this, so that we can go in carry on in our devotional service and know that we're being protected. And to reject any such suggestions or opportunities, then we know we've got something far greater waiting for us. There's the example there of Junior Haridas, not to be confused with Haridas Thakur, who was a pure devotee of the Lord. It said how his singing Lord Chaitanya used to get him to lead kirtans, and the sound of his voice, imbued with so much love, used to melt stones. And there's one he was engaged in by Bhagavatam, but to get some rice from one other devotee, Melini. And he went there and got the rice, and the rice was cooked for Lord Chaitanya. But Lord Chaitanya, he could detect the consciousness or the subtleties of that prasadam. Because when we're offering, it's not only the person that offers the prasadam that affects the quality of the offering, but it's also the person who buys it, who sells, buys, cooks, and as well as the offering, as well as the person who offers it directly. Just as we say how when meat eating, in the action of meat eating, it's not only the person who eats the meat that gets the reaction, but also the person who cooks it, the person who buys it, the person who sells it, and as well as the person who slaughters the animal. Because after the slaughter, then anyone who takes advantage of that gets the reaction. So similarly, when we're procuring the ingredients, then for prasadam, then one we have to be very cautious. So Lord Chaitanya, he found that he asked a question: where did this rice come from? And he was given details how it was Melini and Junior Haridas got collected the rice from her, and he could detect how there was some lust in the mind of Junior Haridas when he was waiting for the collection of the rice, that some lusty thought was there in his mind as he was collecting it from Malini, his devotee. So at once, because he was in the renounced order, then at once he rejected Junior Haridas. And he wouldn't, despite all the pleas of the devotees, he was, Lord Chaitanya wouldn't entertain any argument or any plea to change his mind. I think he even threatened to go away if they persisted. Is that right?
Seems to ring the bell.
Sorry?
Seems to ring the bell.
So, because he was just doing this to set an example, but especially in the round sort of life, there's no question of any connection with women. And in the Grahastha ashram, there's a license, but in the Brahmacharya ashram and sannyas is strictly forbidden. So to set the example to show the world how significant this injunction should be maintained, how important it is, then this pastime was allowed to take place. And Junior Haridas, he committed suicide afterwards, not being able to bear separation from the Lord. And later in his spiritual form, he sung kirtan to the Lord. So the pure devotees are instruments for the Lord to impress upon us the different aspects of spiritual life and the need for us to strictly follow. So to show to us the power of devotional service, then we have Haridas Thakur, who even before Maya Devi herself, the most expert at luring the minds of the opposite sex, then despite her allurements, he was not disturbed. His purpose was just to have her purified by the chanting of the holy names. So he would make a promise. She would come she was expected to come to try and disturb his mind because he was such a powerful personality. The was very by the association of this Maya Devi herself coming. And because he was focused on the holy names of the Lord, his love for the Lord couldn't be swayed. So he just saw this lady as a potential devotee and wanted to purify her by being exposed to the potent chanting. And eventually this did take place and she became a servant of Tulsi Devi. So in the devotional service, from the very beginning, it said how one should see every woman as mother. Men should see every other woman as mother. There's one OT I met who said, my spiritual master told me he was determined to serve the ladies at this gathering in on the Parikambira. And he told me that my Guru said, if I see every woman as mother, then I'll always remain brahmachari. So I'm just serving my mothers here. So that was very nice. So if this is something that's propagated, then so many there's just so much distasteful results of illicit connection with women. Like you see on advertisements, how if men were to propagate that, the reference of these things, and this is my mother, or it could be someone's sister or someone's daughter. If you see it like that, then it incurs more respect. And because one day some person who may have illicit connection with women now may have a daughter who he's trying to protect from all this. So if somehow or another, then this is something that's preached, then this will be minimized. So it will minimize the degradation of womanhood. Are there any questions or comments at this point?
There was a series of classes by Jayadvaita Swami in Soul Street, long time ago now. It was about selling. It was saying how they use the attraction between the male and the female to sell products. And there's the old saying, isn't it, sex sells. So men are attracted to some female form, and then they end up buying the car just because they have an attraction. So that's how they sell it. So he was just systematically, with this book, he was going through all the different ways that they trick people to become attracted. So that basically they're aware that people have this lower nature, but rather than trying to protect them from it, they're exploiting them. So that's, and of course they also are becoming exploited because they don't know how to control it themselves. So rather than trying to see the danger, they're trying to exploit. But of course, they just become exploited themselves, by doing that. It all backfires on them, unfortunately. But that's what's going on in present day society. They're using women, in fact, and they're using children as well. See that in advertising now, and it's just to appeal to the lower nature.
It just allows people to have. They don't want people to control their senses, but at the same time they want peace and prosperity. So the two don't go together. It says how chastity of women is essential for a good populace. In the absence of that, there's Varnasankara, unwanted children, and can cause such a disturbance in society. Yeah, so it just promotes the continued bewilderment of the soul in this world, so that has no idea of its love relationship it has with the Lord. And this way, this brings real satisfaction. to provide the systematic propagation of Krishna consciousness through book distribution, through prasad distribution, the chant of the holy names. Somehow or other getting it out there, and with enthusiasm, determination, and patience under the direction of the Guru Parampara, then we can change the mood of this civilization, turn the civilization around from being hellbound to direction in the direction of the spiritual world.
There's a group it's all quite old now, but there was a group of kids in America, and they're into straight edge music. And because the new generation always rejects the old generation, so now the new generation was rejecting what the old generation were into, which was illicit sex, eating meat, intoxication. So straight edge now is that they can see that didn't work. So then they're going back to the straight edge. They're going back to no connection with women outside of marriage, no intoxication, no meat eating, no gambling, because they can see that all these activities didn't bring any satisfaction to their parents. So that's their way of revolting against. Just like in the 40s, they were doing all those things to reject the previous generation. Now to reject the previous generation, you have to abstain from all those things.
There's one devotee sadly passed away recently, so he's known for his work with the youth and working with that straight edge, as far as I know, that group of young people, which kind of quells the thinking that you have to be young to preach to the young. He was very successful.
Yeah, the way out on the street now is that the new cool is kind. If you want to be cool, you have to be kind. It used to be that when I was at school, we were taught by, we had an advertising, and the advertising theory was the world is full of suckers, and we have to rip them off. So that was what was cool then. But now it's become cool to become kind, so doing nice things and being kind to people, that's become the new cool.
Well, see, with the pandemic, thousands of people came forward to volunteer. Emergency situations can bring out the best in people. And in the entertainment industry, as far as I know, it can be like just if some catastrophe comes, then someone has to be the hard guy. The hard guy is the hero. Whereas we see in this situation how people pull together to assist. I mean, there's also things like domestic abuse shooting up and things like this, which brought to light the mental health of the civilization just now, or so-called civilization. So it seems that they're making ways to try and help in this way, but at the same time, they still want to maintain the allurement of 5G and so 5G and so on. It's like whatever promotes the bewilderment of the living entity, that's what's given energy by the powers that be. But we're in a battle against Maya, and our army may be very small, but just as the Pandavas, they just collected a few people because they weren't in power. They couldn't have, they were given their choice of Krishna's army or Krishna, both sides. So Duryodhana stood at his head, thinking he wants. So Krishna said, whoever he sees first, when he awakes, then he'll get the first choice. So Duryodhana, he stood at his head, thinking that was the obvious place to be, and Arjuna took the humble decision at his feet. And so he opened his eyes, and Duryodhana got first choice, and being the materialist that he was, he chose the Krishna's army. And Krishna and Arjuna was happy with just Krishna. So as long as we have Krishna and nothing and Krishna and desire him only, then success is there. Wherever there's Arjuna, where the great Arjuna and Krishna, there will always be victory and success. So as long as we're practicing to turn whatever lust we have in our hearts to love for the Lord by following this process strictly, then all success will be there for us. And even more so if we try and take as many people with us as possible. So any other questions?
So it's kind of question on the verse as well. From my experience, even if there's like a tad of sincerity in the heart, most sort of layman kind of ladies or men will detect that and say, okay, well, you're on the spiritual path, I'll kind of give you some distance. It's just like a common etiquette, even in modern degraded society. Like people will think, oh, he's trying to be a monk, or he's trying to on the spiritual path, or leave well alone. And sometimes that's even a challenge for the individuals. They're thinking, well, nobody likes me. But they can see it, it's like you can smell it in my life, this person's trying. So people will generally, the etiquette is to lay off. They even spell it out to you, like, well, you're on the path, so I'm just going to leave you alone. But like in this case, it's almost like there's almost like a kind of a determination going on with this apsara and the yogi. Like it's like there's no sense of that kind of okay, he's trying, you know. So I was just wondering why that was, and if you can shed some light on that, explain a bit what's going on in the pastime.
Well, I think just performing these austerities so that you get away.
I see, right. So it's
And Lord Brahma's fulfilling his desire.
I see.
Because he's performing austerities to satisfy Lord Brahma.
Yeah.
And Brahma, knew what he wanted and sent it. So, Prabhuji him. It wasn't the case it depends how strong the devotee is, the monk is, because he'd take that distancing from them. They're doing him a favour not to give him their association, which may disturb his mind.
Yeah.
So Krishna's giving him protection that way.
Yeah.
Whereas, if someone has a desire to get married and so on, but is desperate, then, which if Mrs. Right comes along,
Right.
then it's, but then, if as well as there's a nice thing about Bhakti Yoga, one can be married and practice yoga process, and use that process to root out the lust from his heart, and have no Krishna as the object of their affection, but because of their affection for Krishna, everybody becomes dear to them, not just their own family.
Do you mind asking then, is it the desire of the devotee that gives the protection? Is it the heart's desire? if that's in the right place, is that what provides the
Well-
safety in situations like?
Well, as long as one's desiring to come to the point where one wants Krishna and Krishna only as their object of attraction at the time of death, because that's when it really matters.
Yeah.
You don't, if at the time of death you have any other attraction, then Krishna fulfills all desires, he'll satisfy that attraction and back here you come.
Yeah.
Whereas if we're trying to develop our love for Krishna, then Krishna will give all, he's so eager to give us whatever his mercy to bring us to that point. It's just our false ego that may get in the way. So thinking we're the controller, enjoyer, or best friend in some way, rather than just leaving it to him and just be the simple servant and an instrument in his mission.
Yeah.
So if we have that in mind, then it helps to put other things and people, opposite sex, whoever we are, into perspective.
Yeah.
Because if you've got the one there, then you can have a series of thoughts, but if you've got the one there, then it really means something.
Yeah.
And it gains potency. So Krishna may put us in situations, but if we've got that mood, then we can see that situation that we're in, whether it's to our senses tasteful or distasteful, then if we've got that mood of really want to progress in our devotional service, then we'll see well, Krishna has put me in this situation for a reason, and we can pray, how can I serve you in this situation? Or how should I react? Or how should I have reacted, if that's the case? And in this way, Krishna he's there, he will give us direction.
I was just going to say, the similar pastime with Devahuti and Kardamamuni is that he didn't try to initiate connection. He didn't go into a dating site to find someone. He just prayed to Lord Brahma, or Kardamamuni directly asked when he saw Krishna, could you please? So that way, a nice arrangement can be made for them. So it kind of highlights that. Don't try to find a wife by your own devices, but refer the situation to higher authority and allow them to arrange that to take place. And the divorce rate with arranged marriages is much less. We have a saying that the woman in the East loves the man she marries, and the woman in the West marries the man she loves. So better that that love is cultivated, rather than just acting impetuously upon, oh, I love this, you love this person this week, and then next week you want to get divorced.
Well, as long as they go and enter the relationship, it's recommended to have some training. So like even initially, may one be attracted by somebody, but then they wish them as their wife without any, it may be by providence, but still some premarital training or direction should take place so that then one can be sure that the relationship is based, has a good foundation. Because there have been successful marriages where they haven't even marrying a non-devotee that became a devotee eventually. So yeah. But some go into marriage having not very good idea of what they're getting into, or what it means to be committed in that relationship. So there are devotees there who qualified to give that direction so that they can know in advance the pitfalls and how to overcome them. And even after marriage too, that direction is always there. So thank you very much for your attention. Let's stop now. And Srimad Bhagavatam Ki,
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada Ki,
Jai.
Is Guru Ki.